live.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome.
I appreciate you doing that every week.
Yeah, I got to get with Lori so we can get it hooked up on her side.
Okay.
But I know I'm using multiple monitors to make it happen, so I'll have to send over a needed required list, or just come up with another way of doing it, which is completely possible.
Just the message from Backham. They're looking for strong bodies every Monday. Anybody that can help unload the truck on Mondays? It's about an hour. And then I have applications for volunteers. If they want to volunteer any other time, they can pick them up at my shop. Just wanted to let everybody know so you can tell other people.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Today is Monday, April 5th, 2021. This is Barberton City Council. We are going into our committee meetings for the Committee of the Whole meetings. So we'll start out with the first committee of Streets, Sidewalks, and Lighting with Mr. Greer.
All right, make sure I'm on. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order Streets, Sidewalk, and Lighting. It is 6 p.m. April 5th, 2021, and we are virtual. On GoToMeeting, all committee members are present, and council members and guests noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion. We have 2 requests for legislation. The first piece of legislation is, let me see if I can find, I had a whole bunch of sticky notes here, and is this the right one? Well, it's a legislation request to allow the mayor to enter into contract with Ohio Department of Transportation for the improvement of 2nd Street Southwest, Wooster Road North, and Norton Avenue, also known as Project ID 108372. The state of Ohio and AMATS is assuming 80%, and the city will cover 20% of the costs associated with this project. These improvements are expected to commence this year, and Mr. Tracy is requesting emergency language to have a certified copy of the legislation returned to ODOT in a timely fashion. As mentioned earlier before the meeting, all council members, I believe, had a detailed email sent from Mr. Tracy explaining the project ID, each project ID, the 2 pieces of legislation here. 2021 road program and the ODOT ruling. Updates for 5th Street and the 76 bridge. I'm just going to read my notes, and then I'll read his just verbatim, just for public watching. But all council members have access. It should be in your email, and if you guys don't have it, I will gladly forward it over there. Barberton's match is $270,000, and $270,000 for, that's our 20% of this. Funds for Wooster Road North and Norton Avenue will come from the permissive funds, and funds for 2nd Street Southwest will come from the street capital budget. Project details is going to be resurfacing 2nd Street Southwest between Hudson Run Road and Wooster Road. Norton Avenue from Barber Road to Wooster Road. Wooster Road from Norton Avenue to Burt Street. And the project consists, for this project ID, the project consists of repaving, doing curbs, ramps, ADA compliant signage, and road markings. And as mentioned, these projects are currently scheduled for 2021 this year. Mr. Tracy, this is what he provided us in the email. for this project ID. This legislation request is the final resolution to enter into contract with ODOT for the resurfacing of Norton Avenue from Barber Road to Worcester Road North. Worcester Road North from Birch Street to Norton Avenue, and 2nd Street Southwest from Worcester Road West to Hudson Run Road. The estimated cost that ODOT is asking from the city is $270,000. This is 20% of our 20%. This is 20% match for the project. Funds for the 20% match will come from permissive funds for Worcester Road North and Norton Avenue, and from the street capital budget for 2nd Street Southwest. The amount that ODOT is asking is below the amount that we currently have budgeted for the projects. This project is scheduled for construction in 2021. He also says that last year the city encumbered $190,324 for the resurfacing of Waterloo Road and South Van Buren. I'm unsure of the final amount of the total disbursements at this point, but my last conversation with ODOT had the project significantly under budget. The city will be reimbursed any unused funds from the money that was put into the escrow for the project. This occurs for a number of reasons. One of those is that ODOT typically estimates on the high side. Other savings were realized in non-performing items that were budgeted for. For example, base repairs were budgeted for, but after milling, there was no base repairs necessary, which led to a significant savings. So that is what Mr. Tracy has provided us with this. So is there any questions for this piece of legislation? Mrs. Fry?
Thank you, Justin. I tried to call Greg today to find this out, but does he want this to go one reading or three?
I would say that this is a one wording emergency language, as he didn't say one reading, but they are requesting emergency language. So I'm going to say that it's one reading.
I think that we should, because this is a project that everybody has known about for a number of years. And as you mentioned about, we had funds encumbered and we have all the funds to pay for it. So I don't see why we would have to have three readings. And I think they're going to get started on this pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So he did explain that. He did say in here that when the projects were started, but not this project. Yeah, it would be best to get this one reading, emergency language, and get it out.
Yeah, I agree.
Mr. Greer?
Mrs. Angela?
Yes, it's because they need ODOT. They need that emergency. They need that certified copy of that legislation, and it has to be returned at a certain time. So, and this is something we've been talking about. So, yeah, I think in order to have the emergency have one reading is because they need that legislation. They need a certified copy.
Yep, and I agree. This is the final resolution for this.
Final.
That means they're gonna they have to have this to start.
Yep.
To actually start doing what they need to do. Is there any other questions from the committee? Any questions from council? Mr. Tracy's not here today, and I don't see the mayor. He might be in here. I don't see the mayor in here, but if anybody does have questions, I'll be glad to. You can send it to me or Mr. Tracy or the mayor. Get that for you. Seeing no questions, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation? Motion made by Mrs. Fry and seconded by Mrs. Angela. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. Second piece of request for legislation is a request for necessary legislation to provide consent to the Director of the Ohio Department of Transportation for the improvement of Worcester Road West from Robinson Avenue to 4th Street Northwest and the intersection of Worcester Road North and State Street. This is project ID 106539. The state of Ohio, AMATS, is assuming 80% in the city
Can we
of Barberton.
need this microphone muted? You're bouncing all over.
All right. Yeah, I'll just restart this piece of legislation over here. So the request for necessary legislation to provide consent to the Director of Ohio Department of Transportation for the improvement of Wooster Road West from Robinson Avenue to 4th Street Northwest and the intersection of Wooster Road North and State Street. This is project ID number 106539. The state of Ohio, AMATS, is assuming 80%, and the city of Barberton is assuming 20% of the cost associated with this project, with the exception of safety-related improvements to Wooster Road West portion of the project. Wooster Road West from 4th Street Northwest to Robinson Avenue is partially funded by the Highway Safety Improvement Funds in addition to the federal funding through AMATS. These improvements are scheduled to be constructed in 2022, and emergency language is requested to have a certified copy of the legislation returned to ODOT in a timely manner. Mr. Tracy provided feedback and an explanation on this piece of legislation as well. Project ID 106539. This request relates to the improvement of the intersection of Wooster Road North and State Street in all directions. The limits of the project includes all the areas that are currently concrete. The other project included in this PID is Wooster Road West from Robinson Avenue to 4th Street Northwest. Both projects are expected to cost approximately $2 million each. Each project, the city has 20% match for construction on both projects, with the exception of safety improvements included in Wooster Road or Wooster and Robinson project. The funding for safety improvements is reduced to a 10% match for constructions and covers the cost for design of the entire project. The city's current match is estimated at $680,000 total for both projects. The city's match will come from permissive and street capital funds. This project ID is scheduled for construction in 2022. I believe we talked about, I don't know this, and I reached out. I was wanting to clarify what the safety portion of this project was, because in the contract it does say that the city agrees to bear 100% of the entire cost of the improvement within the city limits, less the amount of federal aid set aside by the Director of Transportation. So I just wanted to get clarification on what that was. I believe we talked a little bit about it a couple weeks ago, but it really wasn't, we didn't go into detail. So I apologize for not having specific answers regarding what the actual safety features are for that. But I plan on having that, and I'll send that out to all committee and.
Hey, Justin.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. No one can hear you. They can't hear you. I've been getting text messages.
Can't hear me through.
I don't know. They say they can hear everybody else except you.
I can hear you.
Let me turn this up. Okay, I got you. I mean, there's an output. It's probably just a little lower, but I'll double check on that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me get back to my point here. So I will get the info about the specifics for the safety portion of that project. The city of Barberton. Is there any questions about this piece of legislation from the committee members? Is there any questions from council?
Justin, just to let you know, I've been getting chat notices from our callers that they can all hear you fine.
Okay, yeah, I see the Barberton Herald hears me fine. Just what it is there's actually two audio inputs, one for you guys and one that goes out to the stream. It's in order to have me locally but not double up the sound and create an echo for everybody watching. So
Well, they say you're okay now.
okay, I'm looking at my audio inputs.
Okay.
So I'll probably just be low. I know they could hear me. I'm just probably lower than what everybody else is. Is there any questions from council or the gallery. Again, I will have information regarding the safety features to you guys, to everybody, ASAP. Do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation? Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff and seconded by Mrs. Fry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Miscellaneous discussion. Mr. Tracy, in his email, he also provided, I believe, 2 pieces of miscellaneous information. The 2021 road program will be advertised for 2 weeks. The bid opening is scheduled for April 23rd. Once the bids have been reviewed for accuracy and compliance, the winning bidder will be awarded the contract for 2021 for the 2021 road project. The base bid in the road program is approximately 8.5 lane miles of resurfacing and includes the city lot north of the YMCA. The lot will be resurfaced and restriped to increase parking spaces by approximately 100 spaces. The funding for the parking lot is from planning funds. There's a number of alternatives included in the bid in the event that the bidding is very competitive and we're able to add on additional roads. This year's program includes 2 different resurfacing processes. Included is the traditional 2-inch mill and fill, as well as targeted areas for double chip and seal with fog seal. Now, just if you don't know what it is, I had to look it up, but the fog seal is basically a tack layer that's put on top of the road to hold. It's chip and seal, and then they lay another tack layer on top, like basically tar. So we will have the 2021 road program here shortly once the bidding go out. The second piece of miscellaneous information that he sent over was about the I-76 project. Said, I recently spoke with the representatives in ODOT with Ruland Company about scheduling for the I-76 project and the resurfacing of 619. Ruland is responsible for resurfacing as well as the ODOT highway project. Ruland is starting the new curbs, sidewalks, and aprons on Central Avenue from State to Grand Boulevard. This will last approximately 1 month. The week of April 19th, Ruland will begin reconstruction of the dead end of Romig Road, or Romig off of Elmwood. I apologize, I'm stumbling. My screen is flat and I can't read it. This is part of the highway project. The resurfacing of 5th Street Northeast and the State Street is scheduled to take place in May. Ruland is aware of the gas company's presence in the area. However, the gas project is moving along smoothly and should be wrapping up about the same time as Ruland intends to have their subcontractor pave 5th Street Northeast. The ramps to the highway are on pace to be opened this summer. If everything continues to progress at its current rate, Ruland expects to substantially complete the highway project this year. This would include the resurfacing of Worcester Road North from State to the city limits and Kenmore Boulevard. He also goes on to say there's going to be a lot going on in the city this year. With this improvement comes inconveniences, but the inconveniences usually are worth it once the improvements are complete. So that was a lot. Is there any other miscellaneous discussion from committee members? I actually have one other thing I forgot to write down just because I got notice right before we joined here. Fairview. There was a Nixle report that just went out and said Fairview is going to be closed for certain dates. I reached out to the mayor. He did reach back to me relatively fast, and it was relating to some work by the railroad tracks. And I did just get that, but I will pull up that information real fast. If internet will load up. There was a Nixle report that just went out today at 411. Road closures for railroad repair from Tuesday, April 6th through Saturday, April 10th. Closure on Fairview Avenue east of Coventry Road near the towpath. Coventry Road will also be closed to thorough traffic from May Avenue to High Street. There will be a hard closure below the Triangle Island on Norton Avenue beside Star Bar and south of May Avenue. And then detours are going to be posted. So that just came out not too long ago. Is there any other miscellaneous discussion for street, sidewalk, and lighting? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff and seconded by Mrs. Fresh. We are adjourned at 6:19 p.m.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services meeting virtual April 5th, 2021 at 6:19. All members are present. Other members present. We have no new request legislation. And open this up for miscellaneous discussion, please. Anybody in the committee?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No.
All right. Anybody else from council members or guests? All right. Hearing none or seeing none. Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
I will second that.
Mr. Griffin and Mr. Heidick. And we are adjourned at 6:21. And with that, I'll pass, President.
Thank you. Next up is Planning, Annexations, and Codes with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes, a meeting now at April 5th at 6:21 p.m. virtually as a GoToMeeting. All members are present along with council and others noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion. We have no requests for legislation. I have nothing for miscellaneous unless somebody on the committee does have something for miscellaneous. I can open that up to the committee people. Nothing? Anything from the body? Anything from the body?
Ms. Angeloff?
Mr. Heidick
Yes.
has his hand.
Mr. Jaber?
Thank you, Ms. Angeloff. Just touching base, I reached out to Mr. Trevor Hunt about the vacant properties in the city. I was wondering if we can try to get some more information about that. I've had a couple of residents in my ward alone and also in different wards still trying to inquire about purchasing the properties next door the city owned. Do we have a list of those yet, or can you figure something out?
I have talked to Mr. Hunt in regards to this in the planning department, and they are putting something together. That's something they have to take a look at, see if it's in the Summit County Land Bank. But that is one thing that Mr. Hunt has been working on. Some of this empty lots that you see are actually owned by people. Some are owned by Summit County, and some are ours. So he is compiling a list with that, and he will be addressing council with that when that is done.
Thank you very much. One more question also, Ms. Angeloff. I forwarded to the mayor and also Mr. Trevor Hunt information about the L&L trucking. It didn't work out very well with Miller's towing, but we do have another business owner from Wadsworth, Kissinger Welding. His name is Joe. I met with him a couple of times. Very interested in that. I'll forward you his information. If you don't mind, just give him a call and you can help him out any way you can.
Well, no, you can forward. I did read your email, Mr. Jaber, and you can forward that on to the mayor and Mr. Hunt, and they can get in touch with him and set up a meeting and check the zoning on that and see what he's looking at and what he needs. And so they'll be setting up a meeting to talk to Mr. I thought you said his name was Pasternak, something of that sort. I did get that email.
Yes. Mm-hmm. He forwarded it to you?
Yes, I have it. I know that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I apologize. I didn't put you in that email. It was at 9 o'clock at night, and I just sent them out to a couple people. I appreciate it. Thank you for the information.
Yep, we're working on that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Anything else from the body? No? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Chairman,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Heidig.
thank you, Chair. I don't know if everybody saw the email chain from the mayor, but there was a little bit of discussion about the solar powered trash compactors.
Yes.
And I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we were to go with something like that or entertain it, I would think we would have to discuss any type of ordinance involving the rules of advertising on it to be codified. So would that go through this committee?
Yes, that is another thing that the mayor had talked about, those solar compactors. And I believe he was looking at maybe around Lake Ann. And he didn't get a lot of feedback from council. So he sent that out again. And I did see everybody's answer on that. And there will be some ruling on the advertising, if you're going to do 1 year advertising, 3 years, 5 years, how that's going to be done. There's a, that's, first of all, the mayor wanted to find out if council was on board with having that around there. And I think most of them that wrote back, they were, happy with that. I think that's a great idea. When we first started our recycle program back in 1992, we really touched base with a lot of different communities with our project. And we had a lot of different, like, for example, Kent State, Kent, Ohio, they wanted to know how we operated that, how we did that. They came in. So we were like the first initiative city to do something with the curbside recycling. And I'm hoping that this happens too with these solar compactors that, they'll say, oh, Barberton has them, let's go talk to them and see what they're doing in that. So I think that will be in the works, and naturally there'll have to be something that an advertiser, when they come in, there has to be a certain legalities with that, which I don't know that would have to come from Lisa Miller and the mayor and that. So we'll be working on that too. Any other questions?
I was just concerned that if we needed to set any parameters ourselves on what type of advertisements, just to have it in our codes, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable.
Right.
Just so we have that in our codes. And if we decide to go forward with this, I think it should be probably a good idea for everybody that has any ideas on mostly what shouldn't be acceptable to email yourself there, so that you could compile some sort of list and get us basically get us up to speed so we can discuss things.
Okay, yeah, and then that would be, I think that would be the planning department, design review board maybe even would get involved in that, on that. Planning, that's all legislation. That would be something that if they were going to go out to or start advertising for the solar compactors, that we have to have something in place before we do that. So it will come across the codes and that to see what we can do. We just haven't. The first step was how many people on city council, how many council members were interested in this. That was the first thing. And now it looks as though there's quite a few that are interested in that, and then we'll have to do our homework on that.
Correct. I just worry that without parameters, I don't want to see alcohol or tobacco or things of that nature. And
right. No, that wouldn't happen. That's now when you advertise, you have to be very careful. And so that will be something that I'm sure through the summertime we'll be looking at that, or I'll check with other communities to see if they have them and how they do the advertising on that. So I'll get with the mayor and with Mr. Hunt to see if they want me to do some legwork on that.
Thank you. And I just have one other thing.
Sure.
It was kind of late, and it was just kind of a passing thing with the mayor there. I was waiting to the planning committee to tell you. I did ask him the status of CIC. I don't know if he's gotten to you, but he said the paperwork's not been filed yet, that the state is completely backlogged. So we're pretty much stuck in a rut right now with COVID. And it was just a passing question that popped up.
Right. I talked to him. I talked to the mayor pretty regularly about that. But now with the COVID money and the new one that's coming through, and there's a lot involved in this new relief fund that's coming through. The state doesn't know what they can do, what they can't do, and it's being passed down to the counties, it's being passed down to the cities. So the mayor has a plate full at that time, and so they have to get that figured out, what they're doing with that a relief program money and how they can spend that and what they can do, and then we'll get started. It's just that there's just been so much going on with COVID, and there's only so much you can do and so many meetings a day you can have. So we'll get back with that.
I'm just hoping with rescue plan monies and whatnot that the state picks up the slack and starts processing the paperwork for the articles of incorporation and all the technicalities.
Yes. Everybody's behind. Everybody. 2021 is going to be rush. Everything wants to get done, and it just takes time. It takes a lot of time on that. I appreciate your questions and concerns, though.
Thank you, Chair. That's all I have.
That's all. Anybody else?
Ms. Angeloff?
Yes.
Two other questions. Have you guys got information from Copart when they're going to break ground? I've had a couple business owners in the area and residents ask about that.
No, I don't have that. I do have a planning meeting on the 21st of April, and I've gone past it quite a few times and was wondering what was going on. But there's storm water mitigation they have to go through. There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of stuff before they can come and break ground. So the paperwork is what they have to do. They just can't throw something up there and do this and do the fence. So I'm waiting till the 21st when Planning Commission has their next meeting to find out what's going on with Copart.
Thank you. And one more question. Did we hire a new employee in the planning department?
Yes. In fact, he came from actually the service department. And he was at the last meeting. In fact, you saw him there, Mr. Jaber, at the last March meeting. Yeah. So he's very he's learning the ropes and a lot for him to learn. So yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you give me his name, please? Because I said he wasn't in person. He was on TV, on virtual, and I couldn't see it very well.
Hang on. I'll have to get my book.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
His name's Justin Halter.
Oh.
Justin. And
Justin. I knew it was Justin.
His last name's Halter. Halter.
Halter.
Thank you.
Correct.
And he's from the service department, you said?
I believe so. I believe he was down in the service department. Or he was working, I don't know, an intern. Yeah.
He was working in the mayor's office.
The mayor's office, yeah, with Mr. Tracy.
As an intern.
Mm-hmm.
No, hello, this is Dory.
Okay. The wrong person?
He started as an intern out of the safety department. He did some great work for my office. He completed the emergency operations plan, the coordination of it's the other EMA plan. He's got a 4-year degree in Homeland Security. He was an excellent choice for this position. There were a few that were interviewed, quite a few, and he came on top through a board classified process. He'll do an excellent job. And he was working, he got promoted out of my office as an intern. He became the administrative coordinator of the department. He did several projects there. And then he was in a resume and was interviewed for the community development administrator position formerly held by Melissa McFadden.
Thank you. Very good.
Ms. Doherty, I think I didn't hear you all that. Did anybody else have a hard time hearing her? I think your phone was cutting out.
I'm using my iPad. Can you hear it any better? I'm getting closer to the mic.
Can you just, if there's any way you can email me that information, is that possible?
Sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Nina, Mr. Heidick has his hand up.
Mr. Heidick, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. What Mr. Jaber alluded to there with the Copart there, if you could, when you go to that meeting, if you get any more information, when they're getting close to breaking ground, let me know. I've had several area bank managers reach out to me, and when you have a business like that, they like to request from their offices for more funds to be in their bank available, since they say that people come in and withdraw larger sums of money in cash to pay for anything they buy. That if we keep them informed of when it's getting closer, so they can make their requests to have more funds on hand from their treasuries. Thank you.
Yes. And I don't know what banking that they do. I don't even know if they will bring that out publicly, what bank that they're going to use. But anything that I pick up at the planning commission meeting on the 21st, I will send that. I will let council know about that.
Thank you. Yeah, this is mostly private citizens. He said that at other banks, that when one of these places is close by, they sometimes have a run during days of auctions that people are withdrawing cash at a fast rate, have it on hand.
Yeah, right. I worked at a bank for 15 years. I know how that works. So you got to have the money there from Brinks. So, okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Thanks. Anything else from anybody on the body or committee?
Yes, Mrs. Angeloff, Chair. Anything from Key Bank and Burger King about the location? From Mr. Willis? Has anybody spoke to Mr. Willis yet again?
From what I understand, that Key Bank is not interested in selling that property to Burger King.
Well, if it goes for sale, it's really up to whoever purchases it. Have you guys talked to Burger King, Mr. Willis himself yet, though, to try to get him to jump on board? When it goes for sale, anybody can buy it. You can buy it. I can buy it. Key Bank doesn't have control who buys
Key
it.
Bank has stated they're not going to do anything until after they close the bank and made a decision.
Right.
I spoke with them myself today. They are not interested in entertaining anything until their board makes decisions.
And usually that's what does with the bank. When a bank closes, that building can sit for a while until they find the fit for that. But that would be something that a council person would not go and ask them. Or I would not call the gentleman from the bank and say, are you going to sell it or what? That's not what council does. That's what administration does. Mrs. Fry? Mrs. Fry?
Thank you, Mrs. Angeloff. I just wanted to say that last week the mayor sent out an email. It was on 3/26, and he addressed that very issue, Mr.
Exactly.
Chair. It's number 5 in the things that he sent to us, and he tells all about Key Bank and what they're doing.
And we have to remember, we're legislation. I would never call anybody at the bank to ask them if they were interested in selling that. That's not, they have a board, they have the control, they have a board of that bank. It might not even be in Ohio. I don't even know that, but that is something that's up to them. And normally when a bank closes, that is something that the board will make a decision on. So, and it could be another bank coming in there. I used to work at that bank, and it was Barberton State Bank, and it changed names to Barberton State Bank, American Bank of Commerce, Centrent, Society, and Key Bank. So there you go. They might be interested in selling that to another bank. Any other questions? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Mrs. Coburn, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Greer, and we are adjourned at 6:37. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up is finance personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wait a minute. Trying to see the time. It is 6:37, and we are bringing the finance and personnel meeting to order. Today is Monday, April 5th. It is 6:37. We are meeting virtually, and guests are noted on my meeting agenda. Before I got started, I would like to say that we all got an email from Julian and Grube asking us to fill out a a questionnaire, and it has to be returned to them in a timely manner. It's about an audit for the city of Barberton. So if you could all do that in the next couple of days, that would be great. Now getting on to my meeting. Tonight we have one piece of new legislation. We have a letter from Jeremy Flaker for legislation to be adopted as an emergency ordinance for the creation of a new special revenue fund called American Rescue Plan Grant Fund. The approval to create this fund is so we can record the receipts and expenses of the American Rescue Plan Act money the city will receive. Mr. Flaker is asking for one reading and the passage as an emergency so that the fund will be created by the time we start receiving the funds from the federal government from the American Rescue Plan Act. Does anyone have any questions about that? I can't see everybody, so you can just speak up if you have a question, because not everybody is on my screen.
Chair?
Yes, Mr. Heidig?
Thank you. Do we know ballpark what the amount Barberton's going to receive?
Ballpark's like $16 million. However, right now we have no parameters. We have no, we don't have the information that we need to know how we can use the money. We are going to get that from the U.S. Treasury, and the mayor has got together a group to meet every Wednesday to discuss the different projects that we might be able to accomplish with the money. And we only have until, I believe it's 2024, maybe, to use the money. Mr. Flaker can correct me if that's incorrect, but there are a lot of, just like with the COVID money, there are a lot of restrictions on what you can use the money for. So at this point, we don't know, what we are going to do. People are on this committee are thinking of places where a large sum of money would be nice to have in order to accomplish some of the things that we'd like to get done in the city. But at this point, we don't have anything at all planned. Mr. Flaker, would you like to speak? Thank you, Mr. Heidig.
Yeah, you were correct. The dollar amount that we're anticipating receiving is a little over 16 million. Right now, they're basically only showing 4 categories of what it can be spent on. But as always, we're still waiting guidance from the Treasury, because as you all know, the CARES Act money, they started with one set of rules and guidance, and the next day it changed to something else, and then the next day it changed to something else. And so waiting guidance on that. And Mrs. Fry was correct. The money does have to be used up by December 2024. We'll receive our first half of the money in the coming month, because they had 60 days to get that money out to the municipalities, state, local governments, county governments. They had 60 days from the signage of that bill. So we should be receiving the first half then. And then within a year after receiving that, we'll receive the second half. So in the matter of, say, 12 to 13 months, we should receive the full amount of money from this, the new legislation that the federal government passed.
Thank you, Mr. Flaker. Are there any other questions?
Mrs. Fry?
Okay, go ahead. And I saw you too, Justin. I'll call on you next.
Mr. Flaker, what are the 4 categories?
Yes.
The first one is to mitigate the risk of the spread of COVID-19. So it's very similar to the wording of the CARES Act money. 2 is to pay, basically it's hazard pay for your frontline workers. The third one is to replace any revenue lost due to COVID-19. So this one can be used as revenue replacement, the downfall is our income tax from COVID really didn't drop in 2020, and 2019 was a down year on our revenues to begin with because of our budget. So there could be some problems with that, using it for that purpose. And then the fourth category, and this is one where a lot of people are trying to seek guidance, is water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. It's where a lot of people are trying to figure out guidance on, because that word "or," is it only for, do you have to choose one of those three categories? Do you have to choose water? Do you have to choose sewer? Do you have to choose broadband? Or could you use it for a variety? And when I say these improvements, it has to be necessary. It has to be deemed necessary. So you just can't say, hey, I'm going to throw in a water line just because we have money. It has to be a necessary water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure improvement.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Greer, I take it that was your question.
Yes, Chair. Same
Okay,
exact
so you.
question.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Medges and seconded by Mrs. Angeloff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That passes unanimously. The other items on my agenda for this evening are items that have already come out of committee, but we will be voting on them next week. The first is extending operation of the current jet agreement with the city of Norton. And everyone understands that this is a split for income tax revenues in joint economic development areas. And it's D, but I can't think of what the D is for.
District.
And district, yes, thank you, district. And we are going to go forward and create another agreement for another 25 years. And that is already on the agenda to be voted on. And as far as I know, I think Mr. Flaker and the mayor and Mrs. Miller will be giving us updates about how that's going to work. And since a couple of them aren't even here tonight, that will happen before we go the 3 readings. So does anybody have any other questions about that? No? Does anybody have hands up that I can't see? No? Okay. Then the next piece of legislation that will be on that we'll be voting on next week is the Barberton Public Library COVID CDBG grant for audiovisual equipment. And we discussed this last week. It was that the library had applied for a grant through the city for audiovisual equipment. And we are going to reimburse them because they had to go through the city to get the grant money. Any questions about that? Okay, the next is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Browse McDowell in the amount of $10,875 for legal services rendered and declaring an emergency. Does anybody have any questions about this piece of legislation? Okay. Is there any miscellaneous discussion for finance for this evening?
Mrs. Fry, if I may.
Yes, you may.
First thing, I just want to bring to everyone's attention again, if you didn't see the email that I sent out last week, the city income tax filing deadline for individuals only is pushed back to May 17th. It does not affect businesses at this time, so business net profit and that still has to be done April 15th. But individuals has an extension until May 17th to get their city income tax filed. Also, last week we also priced our notes for this year. Good news is we got a very good rate, 0.22. They knew we could get at least 0.24, but we priced them very aggressively at 0.22. And we had some buyers on that, so that's good news for the city. Every little bit helps when we're talking about the basis points and having those come down. Every little bit counts. It was just good timing at the market and that. So just wanted to spread that to you. We'll get that finished up in the next week, getting the signatures needed by myself and administration, and get the notes all taken care of.
That's great news. Thank you, Mr. Flaker. Do you have anything else?
No, that is all for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to discuss? Miscellaneous items for finance? I don't see any hands, so if I can't see you, if you're not on my screen. Oh, Mrs. Angeloff?
You're muted.
Okay. She doesn't want to ask a question. She flagged me off. Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Angeloff? Mrs. Angeloff made a motion to adjourn, and do I have a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Mrs. DeBevick. Mrs. DeBevick seconded that motion, and we are adjourned at 6:50 p.m.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Fry. All right. We're going to go right into our committee of the whole meeting. So Council Rule 103 states a regular and the committee of the whole meeting shall be at 7:30. Since we are starting earlier than this, we need to invoke Council Rule 702. Do I have a motion for this, Mrs. DeBevick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 103.
Thank you. And Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to invoke 702 to suspend 103.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick, second by Mr. Heidick to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 103. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we'll go right into our committee of the whole meeting. Today is Monday, April 5th, 2020. This is Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 6:51. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. Angeloff.
Here.
Mrs. Coburn.
Here.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Mr. Greer.
Present.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
And Mr. Medges is here.
Okay. Citizens addressing council.
We have none.
Okay, we'll go right into our committee reports. First up is Mrs. Angeloff with planning, annexations, and codes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning and Annexation Codes met this evening at 6:21, virtual GoToMeeting. All members were present, along with all council members and others as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion: we have no legislation request. Miscellaneous discussion: Mr. Jaber asked if I knew anything about the L&L truck and about Cobart and about the new gentleman that he had sent an email out looking at buying or purchasing L&L truck, and about Key Bank. No, I don't have answers for any of that. We're on legislation. I don't call the bank to find out if they're interested in selling. That is what our planning director and our mayor does. Mr. Heidick did ask about the solar compactors, about the advertising. And yes, before any of that can be done, we will have to have codes or some type of advertising that's going to be renewed every year, every 3 years, every 5 years, something of that sort. I will check with the planning department and see if they want me to reach out to other communities to see how they did with the advertising. Mr. Heidick also asked about the CIC. With the new COVID relief fund that we're going to be receiving and everything with the COVID and whatnot, the state of Ohio is a little bit behind on everything. The mayor has not forgotten about that CIC. I talk to him on a regular basis about that. And hopefully we can get through this and we can get started with that. We do have Mr. Jaber wanted to know about the new employee in the planning department, and Mrs. Daughtery gave us a little background for Justin Halter, and he was at the planning commission meeting in March, and I met him, and he's excited to be part of our team, or our family, I should say, and he seems to be on board with the planning department. And with that, we adjourned at 6:37 p.m. And with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is Mr. Greer with Streets, Sidewalks, and Lighting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Streets, Sidewalk, and Lighting met today, April 5th, 2021 at 6 p.m. We were virtual. All members of the committee were present. All council members were present and guests noted. Topics of discussion: we had two pieces of legislation today. First piece of legislation was legislation requested to allow the mayor to enter into contract with Ohio Department of Transportation for the improvement of 2nd Street Southwest, Worcester Road North, and Norton Avenue, also known as Project ID 108372. The state of Ohio, AMATS, is assuming 80%, and the city of Barberton is paying 20% of the cost of the project. These improvements are expected to commence this year. This is the final resolution for this, so this is the last thing they need in order to start the construction process. This is emergency language, and we're going to go one reading. Barberton's match for this is $270,067. Funds for the Worcester Road North and Norton Avenue will come from the permissive funds. Funds for the 2nd Street Southwest part will come from the street capital budget. Project details: 2nd Street Southwest is between Hudson Run and Worcester Road. Norton Avenue from Barber Road to Worcester Road. Worcester Road from Norton Avenue to Birch Street. The project consists of repaving, curbs, accessibility ramps, signage, and street markings. And as mentioned, these projects are currently scheduled to commence this year. That piece of legislation passed and will be coming to the floor. The second piece of legislation is a request for necessary legislation to provide consent to the Ohio Department of Transportation for improvement of Worcester Road West from Robinson Avenue to 4th Street Northwest and the intersection of Worcester Road North and State Street. This is project ID 106539. The state of Ohio, AMAT, is assuming 80%, and the city of Barberton is assuming 20% the rest of the project, with the exception of safety-related improvements to Worcester Road West. I don't have the specific details for that, but I will make sure that council is informed as soon as possible. Worcester Road West from 4th Street Northwest to Robinson Avenue is partially funded by the Highway Safety Improvement Funds in addition to the federal funding through AMATs. These improvements are scheduled to be constructed in 2022 as of now. And again, this is emergency language, and it'll be one reading. Barberton's match for this project is $680,000, and both projects, I believe, come out to roughly $4 million from the email that Mr. Tracy sent. This piece of legislation passed and will be going to the floor. Miscellaneous discussion. Mr. Tracy provided in an email updates for the 2021 road program. The opening bid is scheduled for April 23rd. The 2021 program is looking to do 8.5 lane miles of road this year. The bid also includes the city lot by the YMCA. That portion of the project will increase parking by an additional 100 parking spaces. The funding for the lot is coming from the planning funds. There are a number of alternate roads that they're looking to get bid as well. This includes chip and seal and fog sealing, just in case that the bids come back competitive, and we're ready just in case they come back and we can get as much as we can get. We adjourned at 6:19 p.m. and with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is Mrs. Coburn with City Utilities.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met on March 15th. We had a request for legislation that was voted on to come be brought forward, and that was for the MOU with Summit County Department of Public Health. We had no miscellaneous discussion, and with that, I pass.
Thank you. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met March 22nd, 2021 at 6:02 virtually, and all members of the committee were present. We had one request for legislation. It was a letter from Chief Persley requesting legislation appropriating $1,000 from the Unappropriated Fire Prevention Education Fund to the operation and maintenance of the Fire Prevention Education Fund for the purchase of smoke detectors for Barberton residents. This, the chief had given us some information about this. The union is going to contribute $500, and then they have this $1,000. And I believe we received a letter that we will discuss next week in safety, in which they'll be asking the foundation for a grant. I believe the total that they need is $2,500. But basically, that pallet of smoke detectors lasts a really long time for the city, and it's a great program. As a resident, you fill out an application, and the application, the fire department comes out and installs the smoke detectors. So we will be voting on that piece of legislation next week. We also had some miscellaneous discussion regarding the last lot of scrap and salvage vehicles. Mr. Flaker indicated that they were sold for $10,000 on Gov Deals, and we received $9,250 after the percentage-based fee. We also had some discussion about traffic on 31st Street, and 33rd Street is permissive. We were just having a conversation about that. And I have followed up on that with the gentleman who has who was upset about it and has been complaining, and Mr. Tracy since has emailed me some additional information. So with that, Public Welfare and Safety will pass.
You were muted, Mr. President.
Sorry about that. Next up is Rules, Marketing, and Development, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met on March 22nd. We met virtual, all members present, and all others noted. We had no requests for new legislation, but we did discuss procedures for transmitting and delivering letters, and we needed an amendment to the Barberton governing rules. We brought that out of committee, and that was voted on the 29th, and it was passed. So we made a motion to adjourn, and we adjourned at 6:42 after the discussion. With that, I pass, sir.
Thank you. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Draber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met virtual April 5th, 2021 at 6:19. We had no new request legislation, and we had no discussion, and we adjourned at 6:21. Thank you, and that I pass.
Thank you. Next up is City Properties, Parks, and Recreation with Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Property Parks Recreation, Monday, March 22nd. We're
losing you, Mr. Heidick. I believe he's going to have to call back in. So why don't we go right into, we'll come back to him and do, right now we'll do Finance and Personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel met this evening, April 5th. The meeting started at 6:37. It was virtual. All members of the committee were present, as well as all council members and guests as noted on my agenda sheet. We had one new request for legislation. It was a letter from Jeremy Flaker for legislation to be adopted as an emergency ordinance for the creation of a new special revenue fund called American Rescue Plan Grant Fund. The approval to create this fund is so that we can record the receipts and expenses of the American Rescue Act money the city will receive. Mr. Flaker is asking for one reading and passage as an emergency so that the fund will be created by the time we start receiving the funds from the federal government from the American Rescue Plan Act. We discussed a little bit about the American Rescue Plan and how much money we would be getting, and the city will be getting a little over $16 million. However, we do not have concrete parameters and rules as to how the money can be spent, and if you don't spend it properly, you would have to return it. But Mr. Flaker gave us like an outline of what they have said the money can be used for, but of course the U.S. Treasury will need to expand on this. The first is to mitigate the spread of COVID. The second is to pay hazard pay for frontline workers. The third is to replace lost revenue, and Mr. Flaker explained that actually we didn't lose too much revenue because 2019 was down 2, and 2020 we didn't really lose a lot of our income from tax revenue. And the fourth is water, sewer, or broadband. And this is very vague. We don't know if you can use all three of them, one of them, how they can be used in that way. And the one key to this is it must be a necessary improvement. You cannot just replace something because you want to. It has to be a necessary improvement. Mr. Flaker also explained that we should get the first half of the money in the coming months because it was to be dispersed 60 days after the signage of the bill, and the second half will be received next year at the same time. For next week, we have a couple of items that will be on the agenda for voting. And the first is extending the operation of the current jet agreement with the city of Norton. This particular piece of legislation will go 3 readings. And in the coming weeks, when we discuss this particular piece of legislation, we will have the mayor, the law director, and Mr. Flaker on hand to guide us through how we're going to get this new jet agreement up and running. The next piece of legislation, which we got out of committee last week, is titled Barberton Public Library COVID CDBG Grant for Audiovisual Equipment. This is a grant that was applied for by the library through the city, and now we are going to reimburse them the $20,000 that they got in the grant because it did come through the city. The next piece of legislation that will be on next week's agenda is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Browse McDowell in the amount of $10,875 for legal services rendered and declaring an emergency. In miscellaneous discussion, Mr. Flaker explained that the city income tax deadline has been pushed back to May 17th, but this is for personal income tax only. It is not for business income tax. And he also explained that they did get a very good rate for the notes, for all the note ordinances that we passed last week, or I think that's when we passed them. But anyway, they got a very good rate, which is 0.22%. So that's good news for the city. We had no other miscellaneous discussion, and we adjourned at 6:50 p.m. With that, I will pass.
Thank you. And we'll go back to City Properties, Parks, and Recreation with Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry about that. All seem to have lost connection. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation met Monday, March 22nd, 6 p.m. Everybody present and accounted for. We had no new requests for legislation. We had no miscellaneous discussion. And dealing with Parks and Recreation, I'd just like to say it went final. Kansas City beats the Indians 3-0. With that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Okay. Any remarks from the body? Anybody have anything for us?
Mr. President?
Go for it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of things. One was going towards Mrs. Angeloff. You said you met Justin. First of all, congratulations, Justin, for joining the group and the family in March. I just feel there's lack of communication. If he joined March, you should have sent us an email, or Mrs. Doherty should have sent us an email saying we got a new planning department employee. Again, I just want everybody to be on the same page. I just feel like lack of communication. That shows right there. No lack of communication if you met him in March and he got hired in March. Ms. Doherty and Ms. Angeloff. And second of all, the correction for Mrs. Nina. Also, both business owners came to me. First was the Burger King, and I reached out to him. And second, for the welding, for L&L, both businessmen came to my establishment first. And then I followed up with that. And I don't see nothing in the council rules where it says we're not allowed to go out and talk to other business owners and, you know, talk good about our city. I did make a pamphlet for our city, and I'm proud to carry it with me everywhere I go in the city and outside the city. And I will not change that. And I will try to talk to other business owners to show them how lucky we are to have Barberton. And with that, I pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, the mayor's not here. Is there anybody who wants to say anything in his behalf? Any department heads? Okay, seeing none. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to say something. We do have an ad out for seasonals at this time. And I just want to remind everyone that word of mouth is our best recruitment tool. Often we get repeats that come back, and we enjoy having them back. They tend to know the ropes, but we're always looking for new people as well. So thank you.
Mrs. Doherty, how many people will they be hiring for this season?
I believe it's up to 10. I'm thinking it's 10. And
Okay.
again, we tend to like our repeats because they know the ropes and you know, if they do come back and they've done a good job for us in the past, it's good. And it also helps mainly with college students on break is what we like to see. Then they come back and they also get the OPERS time under their belt in the event that they choose to work for the city at a later date. It would add to their pension.
Okay, thank you. Sounds great. Okay, anybody else? Any department heads? Any council people? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned at 7:13. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
evening,
Good
all.
night.
Good night.